The ancient Message Supreme Commander Vecren stood before the holographic display in the command chamber of the Krillian flagship, his 4 eyes scanning the strange symbols that floated in the air before him. The archaeological team had found something unusual on the dead planet of Zethros Prime, something that had not been seen in over 10,000 years. The symbols belonged to the predecessors, an ancient civilization that had vanished long before the Krillian Empire had even learned to harness fire. The lead archaeologist, a thin female named Thessia, manipulated the controls with her elongated fingers. More symbols appeared, and the translation software struggled to make sense of the ancient language. Vecren had little patience for academic mysteries, but something about this discovery had caught the attention of the Imperial Council, and when the Council took interest, commanders paid attention. "What does it say?" Vecren demanded, his deep voice echoing in the chamber. Thessia hesitated, her skin changing to a pale blue color that indicated uncertainty among her species. "Supreme Commander, the translation is incomplete, but the message appears to be a warning. The predecessors left these beacons throughout this sector of space, all pointing toward a small yellow star system." "A warning about what?" "About the inhabitants of the third planet in that system. The predecessors called it the Blue World. According to these records, they attempted contact with the species there approximately 12,000 years ago. The mission never returned." Vecren snorted, a sound like grinding stones. "One lost expedition and they leave warning beacons across an entire sector? The predecessors were more paranoid than I thought." Thessia pulled up more data, and images began to form in the hologram. Crude representations of bipedal creatures, similar in structure to a dozen other species in the galaxy. The warnings speak of something called persistence hunters and endurance predators. The translations are unclear, but the predecessors seem to believe these creatures were fundamentally dangerous. "Every predator species is dangerous until they meet something stronger," Vecren said dismissively. "What is the current status of this blue world?" A tactical officer stepped forward, his scales gleaming under the chamber lights. "Our scouts report that the species has achieved basic space travel. They call themselves humans. They have established small colonies on nearby planets and moons in their system. Technologically, they are at least 500 years behind us. Militarily, they pose no significant threat." Vecren studied the data, his tactical mind already planning the approach. The Krillian Empire had been expanding for 3 centuries, absorbing smaller civilizations and bringing order to chaotic regions of space. This human species would be no different. They would be offered the chance to join the Empire peacefully, and if they refused, they would be conquered. It was a simple formula that had worked on 47 previous worlds. "Prepare the second fleet," Vecren ordered. "We will make contact with these humans and offer them the opportunity to join our great empire. And Thessia, destroy those warning beacons. They serve no purpose but to spread unfounded fears." 3 weeks later, the Krillian Second Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the human solar system. 50 warships, each bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Vecren stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the blue planet grow larger on the view screen. "It was beautiful," he admitted silently. "Swirling white clouds, vast blue oceans, green and brown landmasses. A rich world, perfect for colonization." The communications officer activated the broad-spectrum transmitter, sending the standard greeting and ultimatum in every known language. "Inhabitants of the third planet, you have been discovered by the Krillian Empire. We come offering you the opportunity to join our civilization. You will be protected, guided, and elevated. In return, you will acknowledge imperial authority and contribute to the greater good of all species. You have 72 hours to respond with your acceptance." For 12 hours there was silence. Vecren was not surprised. Lesser species often needed time to overcome their initial shock and fear. He reviewed the intelligence reports on human civilization. They were divided into numerous nation-states, constantly bickering over resources and territory. They had fought countless wars among themselves, some lasting years, others mere days. Their military technology was primitive, their weapons crude. This would be simple. Then the response came. It was a video transmission, showing a single human female sitting at a desk. She had dark skin and short gray hair, and her eyes held an expression that Vecren could not quite identify. She wore a simple blue uniform with symbols on the shoulders. "This is Secretary General Amara Okafor of the United Earth Government," the human said, her voice calm and steady. We have received your message and your ultimatum. We have discussed your offer in emergency session with representatives from all Earth nations. Our answer is no. Vecren leaned forward, surprised by the directness of the refusal. Most species tried to negotiate, to buy time, to plead for mercy. This human simply said no. Okafor continued speaking. We appreciate that you have given us 72 hours to consider, but we do not need that time. Humanity has spent its entire history fighting for freedom and independence. We will not surrender either to an empire we just met, regardless of your military advantage. If you wish to establish peaceful relations, diplomatic channels, and mutual respect, we are willing to discuss that. If you intend to conquer us, then you should know that we will resist with everything we have. The transmission ended. Vecren's command chamber fell silent. His officers looked at him, waiting for orders. The tactical officer spoke first. Supreme Commander, this is unexpected. Should we give them more time to reconsider? No, Vecren said firmly. They have made their choice. Prepare the assault forces. We will demonstrate our strength by taking their lunar colony. Once they see how easily we can defeat them, they will reconsider their foolish pride. The Krillian assault force consisted of 12 ships and 3,000 soldiers, more than enough to overwhelm the small human settlement on Earth's moon. The base housed approximately 500 humans, mostly scientists and support staff. Intelligence suggested minimal military presence. It would be a quick operation, a demonstration of power that would force Earth to negotiate seriously. Commander Thaxis led the assault personally. He was a veteran of 23 campaigns, and he had seen every trick that desperate species tried when facing the Empire. As his transport ships descended toward the lunar surface, he reviewed the battle plan one final time. Surround the base, cut off communications, and demand surrender. Simple and effective. The transports landed in a coordinated pattern around the human facility. Krillian soldiers in powered armor deployed rapidly, establishing firing positions and blocking all exits. Thaxis activated his external speakers, his translated words echoing across the airless lunar surface. Human defenders, you are surrounded and outnumbered. Surrender now and you will not be harmed. Resist and we will use force. For a moment nothing happened. Then the human base seemed to come alive. Doors that Thaxis had thought were storage units suddenly opened, revealing concealed weapons platforms. The lunar surface itself erupted as hidden positions activated, and suddenly Thaxis realized they had walked into a trap. The humans had known they were coming. They had prepared. What followed was not a battle but a massacre. The human weapons were primitive by Krillian standards, using chemical propellants instead of plasma or lasers, but they were effective. The soldiers fought with a ferocity that shocked Thaxis. They used the lunar terrain expertly, disappearing into craters and behind rock formations, appearing where they should not be, attacking from impossible angles. Thaxis watched in disbelief as a single human soldier, her suit damaged and leaking air, charged directly at a Krillian position. She should have been dead, suffocating in the vacuum, but she kept moving, kept fighting, until she planted an explosive device on a Krillian transport and destroyed it. Only then did she collapse. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, Thaxis had lost 800 soldiers. The human base was destroyed, but so was most of his assault force. The surviving humans, fewer than 50, refused to surrender even as their base collapsed around them. They fought until their weapons ran empty, and even then some tried to fight with tools and bare hands. Thaxis returned to the fleet in shock. He had never seen anything like it. These humans did not fight like rational beings. They fought like cornered animals with desperate fury and complete disregard for their own survival. He delivered his report to Vecren, his voice shaking slightly. Supreme Commander, I have never encountered an enemy like this. They knew we were coming. They prepared traps. They fought with suicidal determination. We won, but the cost was far higher than projected. Vecren listened to the report, his expression darkening. He had expected an easy victory, a quick demonstration of power. Instead, he had lost 800 trained soldiers taking a small lunar base. The mathematics of this war suddenly looked very different. If humans fought this way everywhere, if every base and colony required this level of force to capture, then conquering Earth would cost tens of thousands of lives and take years instead of weeks. He returned to his chamber and accessed the archived data on the predecessor warning beacons. Thessia had been ordered to destroy them, but the data remained in the ship's computers. Vecren read the ancient texts more carefully this time, paying attention to details he had dismissed before. The predecessors had not feared human technology or military might. They had feared something else, something they called the human capacity for sustained conflict and refusal to accept defeat. One passage stood out, its translation now seeming much clearer. These creatures do not know when to stop fighting. They will sacrifice everything, endure any hardship, accept any loss if they believe their cause is just. They are not rational in their warfare. They are driven by something deeper, something we cannot understand or predict. We attempted to establish dominance through superior force. They responded by making the cost of that dominance unbearable. We left their world not because we were defeated, but because continuing meant destroying ourselves to destroy them. The warning to future civilizations is simple: leave the blue world alone. Vecren closed the file and stared at the view screen, watching Earth rotate slowly in the distance. He had ignored an ancient warning, and already he was paying the price. But he was Krillian, and Krillians did not retreat from lesser species. He would find a way to break these humans to make them understand that resistance was futile. He would succeed where the predecessors had failed. He did not yet realize that the predecessors had not failed. They had simply been smart enough to recognize an unwinnable war and leave before it destroyed them. Vecren would learn that lesson the hard way, and so would the entire Krillian Empire. The price of arrogance. The emergency session of the Krillian Imperial Council convened on the capital world of Krylos, deep in the heart of Empire space. Supreme Commander Vecren stood before the assembled council members, each representing one of the core worlds that formed the foundation of Krillian power. Holographic displays surrounded him, showing casualty reports, tactical assessments, and intercepted human communications. The numbers made for grim reading. High Counselor Vren, eldest of the council and veteran of the first expansion wars, spoke with the weight of centuries behind his words. Supreme Commander, you assured us that the human conquest would be concluded within 6 standard months. It has now been 9 months and we control only 3 minor human outposts. Meanwhile, our casualty lists grow longer each day. Explain this failure. Vecren fought to keep his voice steady. Showing weakness before the council meant the end of a military career, or worse. High Counselor, the humans fight unlike any species we have previously encountered. They do not follow predictable patterns. They do not surrender when surrounded. They use tactics that violate every principle of rational warfare. Give us examples, another counselor demanded, her voice sharp with impatience. Vecren activated a holographic recording. It showed a battle on Mars, the red planet that humans had partially colonized. Krillian forces had surrounded a human mining settlement, outnumbering the defenders 5-1. By all military logic, the humans should have surrendered immediately. Instead, they had rigged their entire facility with explosives and waited. When Krillian soldiers entered, the humans detonated everything, killing themselves and taking 600 Krillian warriors with them. They destroyed their own settlement, Vecren explained. They killed themselves rather than surrender. This pattern repeats across every engagement. Humans will sacrifice their own lives to inflict casualties on us. They view death as an acceptable price for resistance. Vren watched the recording with ancient eyes that had seen many wars. This is not unprecedented. Many species fight desperately when their homes are threatened. You must simply apply more force, break their will to resist. We have tried that approach, High Counselor, Vecren said, pulling up more data. We bombed their colony on Jupiter's moon Europa from orbit. We destroyed 80% of the structure. The surviving humans, fewer than 100, continued fighting from the ruins for 3 weeks. They had no food, limited air, and no hope of rescue. They still fought. When we finally captured the last survivors, they were laughing. Laughing while dying from radiation poisoning and starvation. The council chamber fell silent. One of the junior counselors spoke, his voice uncertain. Perhaps there is something wrong with human brain chemistry. Some species have been discovered with neurological conditions that affect fear responses and survival instincts. Vecren shook his head. Our xenobiology teams have examined human prisoners. Their brains function normally by all medical standards. They feel fear, pain, exhaustion, everything we feel. The difference is that they have trained themselves to ignore these signals when they believe their cause is important. They call it discipline and willpower, and apparently every human possesses it to some degree. He pulled up another file, This one showing an intercepted human military training video. It depicted young humans being subjected to intense physical and psychological stress, being taught to push past pain and exhaustion, being conditioned to continue fighting even when rational thought said to stop. The training looked brutal by Krillian standards, and yet humans volunteered for it, competed for the opportunity to undergo it. They prepare for war from youth, Vecren continued. Not just their soldiers, but their entire population. They study historical conflicts, learn from past mistakes, develop new strategies. War is not something humans do occasionally. It is something they have been doing continuously for their entire recorded history. They have been fighting each other for thousands of years, and now they apply all that accumulated knowledge against us. Vren leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. Then we must change our approach. If humans cannot be intimidated by superior force, we must find their weakness. Every species has vulnerabilities. What do humans value most? Their freedom and their homeworld, Vecren answered immediately. They will negotiate on almost anything except those 2 points. They have made that clear in every communication. Then we threaten Earth itself, Vren said coldly. Bring the Dreadnought fleet to human space. Position weapons capable of destroying their planet. Make it clear that continued resistance means the extinction of their species. No rational being would choose extinction over surrender. Vecren wanted to argue, wanted to explain that he no longer believed humans would respond rationally to such threats. But he was a soldier, and soldiers followed orders. It will be done, High Counselor. 6 weeks later, the Krillian Dreadnought fleet arrived at the edge of human space. 28 massive warships, each one carrying planet-killing weapons. Vecren broadcast the ultimatum personally, ensuring that every human on Earth and in the colonies could hear his words. People of Earth, your resistance has been noted. You have fought bravely but pointlessly. We now offer you one final chance for peace. Surrender immediately and accept Imperial rule, or we will destroy your homeworld. You have 48 hours to comply. The response came within 12 hours. It was not from Secretary General Okafor, but from a human military officer named General Marcus Webb. He was old by human standards, his face lined with age and scarred from combat. He wore a simple uniform with numerous decorations and symbols. When he spoke, his voice carried a strange mixture of sadness and determination. Supreme Commander Vecren, I am General Webb, Senior Military Advisor to the United Earth Government. I have spent 40 years studying warfare, and I have learned one fundamental truth. The side that is willing to pay the higher price usually wins, regardless of technological advantage or tactical superiority. You are threatening to destroy Earth, thinking this will break our will to resist. You are wrong. Webb pulled up a holographic display showing images from human history, cities destroyed by war, populations decimated by conflict, entire civilizations brought to the edge of collapse. We humans have nearly destroyed ourselves many times throughout our history. We have fought wars that killed millions, that reduced our cities to rubble, that poisoned our lands and waters, and every time we survived, we rebuilt. We continued. Do you know why? Because humans do not give up. It is not in our nature. The general's expression hardened. You threaten to destroy Earth, very well. If you do so, you will kill billions of humans. But millions live in our colonies throughout the solar system, and millions more serve in our military across space. Those survivors will not forgive. They will not forget, and they will spend the rest of their lives and the lives of their children and their children's children hunting down every Krillian in the galaxy. They will fight you forever at any cost with any method, until either you are destroyed or they are. That is the price of destroying Earth. Not immediate defeat, but eternal war. Webb leaned closer to the camera. So go ahead, Supreme Commander. Destroy our world, but understand that in doing so, you will create an enemy that will never stop, never negotiate, never surrender. You will create millions of humans with nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. Is that really what your empire wants? The transmission ended. Vecren sat in his command chair staring at the blank screen. Around him, his officers waited for orders. The dreadnoughts were charged and ready. One command, and Earth would die. But Webb's words echoed in his mind, and for the first time in his military career, Vecren felt genuine doubt. He opened the file on the predecessor warnings again, reading passages he had initially dismissed as exaggeration. One section described an ancient predecessor expeditionary force that had attempted to establish a research station on Earth 12,000 years ago, during humanity's primitive era. The humans at that time had no technology, no civilization by galactic standards. They lived in small tribal groups, hunted with stone tools, and should have been harmless. The predecessors had taken several humans for study, intending to understand the species before making full contact. The captured humans had been confined in secure facilities, monitored constantly, and treated well by the standards of the time. The humans had escaped anyway. Using nothing but their bare hands and primitive intelligence, they had broken out of containments that were designed to hold much stronger species. They had freed the other humans, destroyed the research equipment, and killed 17 predecessor scientists in the process. The predecessor commander had been so shocked by this event that he had ordered an immediate withdrawal. His final report contained a chilling assessment. These creatures are dangerous not because of what they are now, but because of what they might become. They are tool users, problem solvers, and persistence hunters. They will not stop trying to escape or resist. They will learn from every failure and adapt. If we remain on their world, they will eventually find a way to kill us all regardless of our technological advantage. My recommendation is immediate departure and permanent quarantine of this species. The predecessors had followed that recommendation. They had left Earth and never returned, content to watch from a distance as humanity developed. 12,000 years later, the Galactic Empire had ignored those ancient warnings, believing themselves superior to the long-vanished predecessors. Vecren was beginning to realize that this had been a terrible mistake. He activated his communications console, preparing to report to the council. But before he could begin, alerts sounded across the bridge. The tactical officer shouted in alarm. "Supreme Commander, multiple human ships emerging from hyperspace. They are on attack vectors." "How many?" Vecren demanded. 73 confirmed, more appearing every second. "Supreme Commander, they are not military vessels. They are converted civilian ships, freighters, mining vessels, passenger transports. They have been modified with weapons and armor. They are all heading directly for us." Vecren watched in disbelief as the ragtag human fleet charged toward his dreadnoughts. The human ships were smaller, slower, and far less powerful than Krillian warships. But there were many of them, and they were not slowing down or attempting evasive maneuvers. They were simply accelerating to maximum speed and heading straight for the dreadnought positions. "They are going to ram us," Vecren realized. "All ships, defensive formation. Target the leading vessels." The Krillian dreadnoughts opened fire, their powerful weapons tearing through the approaching human ships. 5 destroyed in the first volley, then 10 more, then 15. The human fleet kept coming. Ships that were hit and crippled continued forward on momentum alone. Their crews already dead, but their vessels still dangerous. One converted freighter, its entire hull engulfed in flames, crashed into a Krillian dreadnought at relativistic speed. The impact destroyed both vessels instantly. The battle became chaos. Human ships rammed Krillian vessels, detonated themselves in proximity to dreadnoughts, and fired every weapon they had until their power cores overloaded. They fought with the same suicidal determination that Vecren had seen on the Moon, on Mars, on Europa. They fought as if death meant nothing and taking Krillians with them meant everything. When it was over, 41 human ships had been destroyed. But they had taken 7 Krillian dreadnoughts with them and damaged 9 more. The survivors of the human fleet, just 13 vessels, were retreating back toward Earth, broadcasting a simple message. "This is what happens if you threaten our home. Imagine what we will do if you actually destroy it." Vecren sat amid the wreckage of his fleet, surrounded by damage reports and casualty lists. 7 dreadnoughts lost. Thousands of Krillian lives ended. And for what? To learn a lesson that the predecessors had tried to teach 12,000 years ago. Humans could not be intimidated. They could not be frightened into surrender. They would fight with everything they had, paying any price, accepting any loss if they believed their cause was just. He opened a channel to Krillos, requesting an immediate council session. When the counselors appeared on the holographic display, Vecren spoke before any of them could question him. "High Counselors, I am formally recommending an immediate ceasefire and withdrawal from human space. The conquest of Earth is not achievable within acceptable parameters. The humans will resist until they are extinct, and attempting to exterminate them will cost us more than we can afford to pay." Vren's expression was cold and disapproving. "You are asking the Empire to retreat from a primitive species? This is unprecedented and unacceptable. With respect, High Counselor, the alternative is worse. If we continue this war, we will eventually win. But the cost will be catastrophic. We will lose thousands more ships, hundreds of thousands more soldiers, and we will create an eternal enemy that will seek revenge for generations. The predecessors tried to warn us about this. They understood what we are only now learning. Humans are not worth conquering. The council debated for hours, but in the end, cold mathematics won the argument. The war was costing too much in lives and resources for too little gain. Earth was rich, but not rich enough to justify the casualties. A formal ceasefire was declared, and diplomatic channels were opened. The Krillian Empire had not been defeated in battle, but it had been forced to the negotiating table by a species that should have been easy prey. Vecren remained at his post, watching Earth on the view screen, thinking about ancient warnings ignored and lessons learned too late. The predecessors had been right all along. Some species were simply too dangerous to conquer, not because they were strong, but because they refused to accept defeat. Humanity was one of those species, and the galaxy would have to learn to live with that reality. The truth revealed. The peace negotiations took place on a neutral station orbiting a distant star, far from both Krillian and human space. The station had been constructed specifically for this purpose, a neutral ground where two species that had been trying to kill each other for over a year could attempt to find common ground. Supreme Commander Vecren led the Krillian delegation, accompanied by High Counselor Vren and a team of diplomats and military advisors. The human delegation was smaller but no less significant. Secretary General Amara Okafor headed the group, flanked by General Marcus Webb and several other representatives from Earth's unified government. The first meeting was tense and formal. Both sides maintained careful diplomatic protocol, speaking through translators even though most participants understood each other's languages by now. Okafor opened the discussions with a simple statement that set the tone for everything that followed. We did not want this war. We would have preferred peaceful coexistence. But we will not surrender our freedom or our independence to anyone, regardless of their technological or military advantages. That is non-negotiable. Vren responded with equal directness. The Krillian Empire has brought order and prosperity to 47 worlds. We offered humanity the same opportunity. Your refusal has cost both our peoples dearly. We are here now to find a solution that prevents further bloodshed. Then acknowledge our sovereignty, Okafor said. Recognize Earth and all human colonies as independent territory. Establish diplomatic relations based on mutual respect rather than dominance. That is the solution. What followed were weeks of careful negotiations, hammering out details of boundaries, trade agreements, and mutual defense protocols. But beneath the diplomatic language, a deeper conversation was taking place. Both species were trying to understand each other, to comprehend how two intelligent civilizations could view the universe so differently. During a break in the formal sessions, Vecren found himself alone with General Webb in one of the station's observation lounges. The old human stood at the viewport watching stars drift past, and Vecren joined him in silence for several minutes before speaking. General, I must ask you something that has troubled me throughout this conflict. Why do humans fight the way you do? Why accept such terrible casualties rather than negotiate? Webb was quiet for a long moment, his scarred face thoughtful. Commander, do you know what Earth is classified as by your own xenobiology databases? A Class 7 habitable world, Vecren answered. Abundant water, oxygen atmosphere, moderate temperatures. Quite pleasant, actually. That is the sanitized version, Webb said with a slight smile. The detailed classification is different. Earth is a high-gravity world with extreme weather patterns, tectonic instability, and an unusually aggressive biosphere. Nearly everything on our planet has evolved to survive in constant competition. We have predators that hunt in packs, prey animals that fight back when cornered, plants that are poisonous or carnivorous, insects that carry deadly diseases, and weather systems that can level cities. Even our microorganisms are aggressive. Humans evolved in an environment that was constantly trying to kill us. Vecren listened carefully, beginning to understand. So you became equally aggressive to survive? Not exactly, Webb corrected. We became persistent. Humans are not the strongest species on Earth. We are not the fastest, not the most armored, not the most venomous. We survived because we refused to give up. We are persistence hunters, Commander. Do you know what that means? I have seen the term in the predecessor warnings, but the translation is unclear. Webb turned from the viewport to face Vecren directly. It means that humans hunt by chasing prey until the prey dies from exhaustion. We are not fast enough to catch a deer in a sprint, so we chase it for hours, for days if necessary, until it collapses from heat stroke and exhaustion. The prey is faster and stronger, but we are more persistent. We do not stop until we either catch our target or die trying. That instinct, that refusal to quit, is built into human psychology at the deepest level. It is how we survived on a death world, and it is why we fight the way we do in war. Vecren felt something cold settle in his chest. You are saying that humans are biologically incapable of giving up? Not incapable, but deeply resistant to it. Surrender feels unnatural to us, especially when we believe we are defending something important. Throughout our history, humans have endured impossible situations rather than quit. We have survived famines, plagues, natural disasters, and countless wars. Each generation learns from the previous one that persistence leads to survival. It becomes cultural, then instinctive. The general pulled up a holographic display showing images from human history. Ancient humans hunting massive animals with primitive spears. Civilizations rebuilding after devastating wars. Explorers crossing deadly terrain to reach new lands. Scientists working for decades to solve single problems. This is what we are, Commander. We are the species that does not know when to quit. You threatened our home, so we fought with everything we had. If you had destroyed Earth, the survivors would have fought you forever. Because that is what humans do when we have nothing left to lose. Vecren thought about the battles he had witnessed. The human soldiers who fought until they died. The civilian ships that rammed his dreadnoughts. The colonies that self-destructed rather than surrender. It all made a terrible kind of sense now. The Krillian Empire had not been fighting a military force. They had been fighting a species whose entire evolutionary history had prepared them for exactly this kind of conflict. A species that had survived by being more stubborn than everything else on their deadly planet. The predecessors understood this, Vecren said quietly. They tried to warn us. They did more than try to warn you, Webb said, pulling up another file. During the negotiations, we accessed some very old human archaeological records. We found something interesting. The hologram showed excavation images from various sites on Earth, all dated to approximately 12,000 years ago. Stone tools with unusually sophisticated design, cave paintings depicting strange beings that did not match any known Earth creature, stories passed down through oral tradition about sky people who came and then left suddenly. The predecessors visited Earth, Webb continued. We always thought the legends were myths, but your warnings confirmed they were real. They came during our Stone Age when we had barely learned to control fire. They took some of our ancestors for study, probably thinking we were harmless primitives. Those captured humans escaped, killed their captors, and freed the others. The predecessors left Earth immediately and never came back. They recognized something in humanity that frightened them more than our primitive weapons ever could. They recognized that you would never stop fighting, Vecren said, understanding dawning. Even 12,000 years ago, even with stone tools and no technology, humans were already too dangerous to control. Exactly. The predecessors were smart enough to leave us alone. They watched from a distance as we developed, and they left warnings for future civilizations. Your empire ignored those warnings and paid the price. Vecren was silent for a long time, absorbing this information. The Krillian Empire had built its power on the assumption that technological superiority guaranteed victory. They had conquered dozens of species by demonstrating overwhelming force and accepting surrender. It had never occurred to them that a species might simply refuse to surrender, might choose extinction over submission. The humans had taught them that lesson, and it had cost thousands of Krillian lives. What happens now? Vecren asked finally. The treaty will establish peace between our peoples, but the galaxy is large. There are other empires, other species. If humans continue to expand into space, they will encounter others who will try to conquer them. Webb smiled grimly. Then those others will learn the same lesson your empire learned. Humans cannot be conquered because we do not know how to give up. Eventually, the galaxy will accept that reality and deal with us as equals rather than targets, or they will keep fighting us and losing until they learn. The peace treaty was finalized 3 weeks later. The Krillian Empire formally recognized human sovereignty over Earth and all current human colonies. Both species agreed to establish embassies and trade relations. Most importantly, the Empire agreed to share its knowledge of other galactic civilizations, giving humanity a comprehensive understanding of their neighbors in space. When the treaty was announced, reactions across both civilizations were mixed. Many Krillians felt humiliated that their empire had been forced to negotiate with a primitive species. Many humans remained suspicious of Krillian intentions, fearing that the peace was merely temporary. But the treaty held because both sides recognized that the alternative was unacceptable. Continued war would cost the Krillians more than they could afford, and it would force humans to fight a battle of extinction they might not survive. Vecren returned to Krillos a changed individual. The Council had already begun incorporating human tactics into Krillian military doctrine, studying the concept of total war and psychological warfare. But more importantly, the Empire had learned humility. They had encountered a species they could not conquer, and that experience had shaken their certainty about their place in the universe. 6 months after the treaty signing, an incident occurred that would define the new relationship between humans and Krillians. A small human exploration vessel, the Endeavor, was attacked by pirates from an unknown species while traversing neutral space. The pirates had disabled the human ship and were preparing to board when a Krillian patrol cruiser arrived, responding to the Endeavor's distress call. The Krillian commander did not hesitate. She engaged the pirates immediately, driving them off and providing assistance to the damaged human vessel. The captain of the Endeavor, a young woman named Elena Torres, sent a personal message to the Krillian commander thanking her for the rescue. The Krillian commander responded with equal courtesy. The exchange was brief and professional, but it marked a significant moment. Two species that had been at war less than a year ago were now helping each other in times of need. News of the rescue spread quickly through both human and Krillian space. It became a symbol of the new relationship, proof that former enemies could become something else, perhaps not friends yet, but at least allies of convenience. Other incidents followed. Human ships assisted Krillian vessels in distress. Krillian stations provided shelter to human colonists fleeing natural disasters. Trade began to flow between the two civilizations, cautiously at first, then with increasing volume and trust. The predecessor warnings once ignored were now studied carefully throughout the galaxy. The Krillian Empire shared the ancient texts with other major civilizations, ensuring that humanity's reputation spread. Some species chose to approach Earth with caution and respect, establishing diplomatic relations rather than making demands. Others, arrogant in their own power, ignored the warnings just as the Krillians had done. They learned the same painful lessons, fighting brief wars with humanity that cost them dearly and gained them nothing. Gradually, humanity's position in the galaxy stabilized. They were not the most powerful species, not the most technologically advanced, not the most numerous, but they were respected, feared, and most importantly, left alone. No one wanted to repeat the Krillian Empire's mistake. No one wanted to fight a war against an enemy that simply refused to lose. 10 years after first contact, Vecren, now retired from military service, accepted an invitation to visit Earth. He traveled alone, curious to see the world that had caused his empire so much trouble. Secretary General Okafor, also nearing the end of her term, personally welcomed him at the spaceport in Geneva. They spent a week together, touring human cities, visiting historical sites, and talking about their respective cultures. Okafor took Vecren to memorials dedicated to those who had died in the war, both human and Krillian. She showed him museums preserving the history of human conflict, thousands of years of warfare that had shaped human civilization. She explained how humans viewed war not as glorious or desirable, but as terrible and necessary, something to be avoided if possible, but fought without mercy when unavoidable. On the final day of his visit, Okafor and Vecren stood together on a mountain overlooking a vast valley. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. "Do you understand us now?" Okafor asked quietly. "Do you understand why we fought the way we did?" Vecren was silent for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I understand that humans are survivors from a world that tried to kill them. I understand that you view surrender as a form of death, unacceptable under almost any circumstances. I understand that your entire history has taught you to never give up, never stop fighting for what you believe is right." "I understand all of that intellectually, but," Okafor prompted, "but I still cannot fully comprehend it emotionally. Krillian's value order, stability, and rational decision-making. The idea of choosing death over surrender, of sacrificing everything for abstract concepts like freedom and independence, still seems irrational to me." I accept that humans think differently, but I do not truly understand it. Okafor smiled. That is honest, and I appreciate honesty. You do not need to understand us completely, Commander. You just need to respect us. That is enough for peace. I do respect you, Vecrin said sincerely. Your species frightens me, but I respect you. I think that might be the most important lesson the Krillian Empire has learned. That fear and respect can coexist, and that sometimes the wisest choice is to leave dangerous things alone. They watched the sunset together in comfortable silence. Two former enemies finding common ground in mutual understanding and hard-won wisdom. The war was over. The peace was holding. And both species were learning to navigate their new relationship. It was not perfect and problems remained, but it was better than the alternative. As darkness fell and stars began appearing in the sky above Earth, Vecrin thought about the predecessors and their ancient warnings. They had been right all along. Humanity was dangerous not because of their weapons or their technology, but because of their refusal to accept defeat. Any species that encountered humans needed to make a choice. Treat them with respect as equals, or face a war that could not be won by traditional means. The Krillian Empire had made that choice the hard way, learning through blood and loss what the predecessors had tried to teach 12,000 years ago. But they had learned, and that was what mattered. The warnings would not be ignored again, not by the Krillians and not by anyone else who valued their survival. The galaxy was a large place, with room for many species, many civilizations, many different ways of thinking and being. Humans had earned their place in that galaxy not through conquest or submission, but through sheer stubborn determination to exist on their own terms. And as Vecrin looked up at the stars from Earth's surface, he realized that this was probably how it should be. A species that had survived on a death world, that had endured countless self-inflicted wars and disasters, that had literally climbed from caves to spacecraft through nothing but persistence and intelligence. Such a species deserved to chart its own course among the stars. The warning had been ignored. The price had been paid and the lesson had been learned. Now finally there was peace. Imperfect, uncertain, but real, and that was worth everything it had cost to achieve.